You ever met someone who acts like your hard-earned things belong to them? That kind of person who doesn't just cross boundaries. They erase them completely. Well, that's exactly what happened to me last winter. I never thought I'd end up in a fight over something as simple as an extension cord. But sometimes, a single cord can show you how rotten a neighbor really is. It gets brutally cold where I live in Canada. When the temperature drops to 20 below, you don't just start your truck. You have to plug it in. Keep the block heater warm so the engine doesn't freeze solid overnight. Everyone who lives here knows that. It's basic survival. My problem started the week after Christmas. I walked out one icy morning to head to work, and my truck wouldn't start. I figured maybe the cord came loose in the wind. So I followed it through the snow, ready to plug it back in. But as I traced the line along the fence, my stomach dropped. Because that orange extension cord, my cord, didn't end at my truck anymore. It was snaking straight into my neighbor's yard. At first I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe they accidentally grabbed the wrong cord. But then I noticed something that made my blood boil. They had unplugged my truck just to steal the outlet. Their end of the cord disappeared under their fence and into their backyard, where I could hear some old generator humming. I yanked their cord out and tossed it right back over the fence. I told myself maybe that'll send the message. I didn't want drama. I just wanted to keep my truck running. The next morning I stepped outside again, and there it was. Their cord was back. Plugged in, bold as ever, like they owned it. My truck was freezing cold again. That's when I realized this wasn't confusion. This was theft. And worse, it was deliberate. Now normally I'd just walk next door and talk it out. But that house was different. It's the sketchy one on our block. The kind of place that gives you a bad feeling even from the sidewalk. The backyard's full of garbage bags, broken chairs, and what looks like an old car engine half buried in snow. There's no door at the back, just a hanging sheet. And at night you can hear yelling, real violent kind of shouting. One of my good neighbors, an older lady named Carol, warned me. She said, "Don't go back there. Those people are trouble." She told me they'd already stolen her recycling bins. In fact, 2 of the bins behind my fence were missing too. I didn't even realize until she said it. That's when I decided I'd handle this the smart way. So that evening, I unplugged everything, wrapped my cord around a post, and brought the plug end inside my house through a small window. If they wanted my power now, they'd have to come into my property to get it. And nobody's bold enough to do that, right? Wrong. The very next morning, my truck was freezing again. I went outside and saw something that made my heart jump. My cord was stretched tight again, running straight under the fence. They had actually climbed into my yard during the night, plugged it back in, and stolen the power again. That's when anger started replacing fear. It wasn't just about electricity anymore. It was about respect. I unplugged it again and threw it over the fence. Harder this time. Then I took a few pictures on my phone. The cord, the plug, my yard. Just in case. Because I was starting to think this might end up involving the police. That night the temperature dropped even lower. I sat in my living room, staring out the window at the faint glow of their yard. It wasn't just the light from their house. It was the light from my outlet keeping them warm. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt that tight knot of anger in my chest. I grabbed my phone and dialed the non-emergency police number. I didn't want to make a huge scene. I just wanted it documented, so if things got worse, there'd be a record. The dispatcher listened carefully. She said, "We'll send officers to take a look." I thanked her, gave my address, and waited. But life doesn't pause for drama. By the time the police showed up, I'd already left for work. When I came home, there was a little note on my door. Officers attended. No contact made. At least it was on file. But I felt disappointed. The neighbor kept stealing power. And there I was, following rules while they broke them right under my nose. For the next few days, I kept my distance. I didn't want to escalate it myself, but it kept happening and over and over. Every morning, that same ugly cord running through the snow, sucking away my electricity. I started sleeping badly. Every sound outside made me wonder if someone was out there again. At one point, I even thought about cutting the cord entirely, but then I imagined what someone that bold might do in revenge. It wasn't worth the risk. Carol told me she'd reported that same house for parking behind her car, blocking her in. She said the city had multiple complaints against them already. Hearing that made me feel less crazy. It wasn't just me. Then came the morning that changed everything. I woke up early, made coffee, and looked out the window. The snow had stopped, but the sky was a dull gray, heavy, quiet. And there it was again. That orange cord, plugged into my outlet. It looked almost smug, like it was mocking me. Something inside me snapped. I thought enough is enough. This time I wasn't just going to unplug it and walk away. I was going to wait. I wanted to catch them in the act, or at least make sure that when I called for help, someone would actually listen. I took my phone, stepped outside, and stood there in the freezing air. My breath fogged in front of me. I unplugged their cord one last time and coiled it up in my hand. Then I looked straight toward their house. Quiet, no movement. I took one deep breath and said to myself, this time I'm not calling the police just to make a report. This time I'm calling them to end it. That morning I called the non-emergency line again. This time I stayed home. The dispatcher recognized my voice. I told her, they're stealing power again, right now. The cord's still plugged in. She said, all right, sir. Officers are on their way. Please stay inside until they arrive. I went back inside but kept watching through the frosty window. The street was silent, only the sound of wind pushing snow across the alley. Then after about 20 minutes I saw the flash of blue and red lights reflecting off the white snow. 2 police officers stepped out of their cruiser and headed toward my backyard. I grabbed my coat and met them outside. The younger one looked down at the cords and shook his head. Sir, this is theft, but it's also a safety issue. He traced the cord with his boot until it disappeared under the fence. You see this? He said. If they're running multiple cords or splicing lines, that's a fire waiting to happen. The older officer spoke up, calm but firm. Do you give us permission to contact your power provider about this? Absolutely, I said. Do whatever you have to do. About an hour later, while the officers were still writing up their report, a white utility truck pulled into the alley. The logo on the side said Northern Electric. The man who stepped out wore a thick jacket, gloves, and a yellow hard hat. He wasn't smiling. You could tell he'd seen this kind of thing before. He nodded at me, then at the officers. Got a report about power theft and unsafe wiring? He asked. The cops pointed toward the fence. Right there. Cords running straight under into that yard. The utility worker followed the line, crouched down, and gave a low whistle. Yeah, this isn't just stealing power, he said. This is dangerous as hell. He walked up to the neighbor's fence and called out, Utility company. I need to inspect your line. No response. He called again, louder this time. Still nothing. Then he turned to the officers. Can you get access? The older cop nodded. They went around to the front door and knocked. From inside I could hear muffled voices and angry, defensive. One of the neighbors yelled something like, We're not doing anything. Then a door slammed. The police came back, shaking their heads. They don't want to cooperate, one said. The utility worker sighed. All right then, he said. We'll handle it from the outside. He pulled a flashlight from his belt, climbed carefully onto a snow-covered step stool, and peered over the fence. After a few seconds, he muttered, Oh, man. He waved for the officers to look too. Curiosity got the best of me. I peeked over as well. Their backyard looked like a junkyard. There were 5 different cords tangled together, orange, yellow, black. all plugged into one outlet on my side, running into the back of their house through a broken window. Some were taped together, others had exposed wires. It was a full electrical nightmare. The worker shook his head. "This could burn the whole block down," he said. Then he turned toward me. "Sir, don't worry. They won't be stealing your power anymore." He walked back to his truck, grabbed a heavy insulated bag and started working on the power meter attached to the neighbor's wall. I watched as he removed the glass cover and used a special wrench to pull the meter right out of its socket. There was a loud metallic click. Then silence. The hum from their yard stopped. No generator, no lights, nothing. He turned around, brushed off his gloves, and said, "Their power's officially cut. We'll be filing a full report for theft and unsafe wiring. They'll need an inspection before it's ever reconnected." The officers thanked him. One of them gave me a small nod, almost like saying, "You did the right thing." A few minutes later, I saw movement behind the neighbor's curtain. Then the door slammed open. The same guy who'd been yelling earlier stumbled out in a thin hoodie, looking furious. He ran to the side of his house and saw the empty socket where the power meter used to be. He shouted, "What the hell?" But the police were still standing there. The younger officer calmly said, "Sir, your power's been disconnected due to theft and safety violations. You'll need to contact the utility company." The man just stood there speechless as the realization hit him. His house and the one glowing warm from my electricity for weeks was now completely dark. That night, as I sat by the window sipping coffee, the temperature dropped again, below freezing. My truck was plugged in, heater humming softly, engine warm. Across the alley, the sketchy house was blacked out. No lights, no sound, just cold silence, I won't lie. A part of me felt guilty. Nobody wants to see someone suffer, especially in winter. But then I remembered the weeks of stolen power, the fear of confronting them, the sleepless nights. They had choices. They made the wrong ones, and honestly, karma made sure they learned their lesson. 2 days later, the good neighbor Carol stopped by. She was grinning ear to ear. "You won't believe it," she said. "They finally cleaned up their yard. Power company came back to inspect and told them it'll be a month before they can reconnect." I couldn't help but laugh. "Guess they'll think twice before stealing from anyone again," I said. She nodded. "Funny thing," she added, "they had the nerve to ask me if they could run a cord from my house." We both burst out laughing. I told her, "I hope you said no." She said, "Honey, I didn't just say no. I told them to buy a generator." A week later, everything was peaceful again. No strange chords, no shouting, no fear. Every time I started my truck, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, not just because it worked, but because justice had finally been served. I realized something that week. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about revenge. It's about setting boundaries and letting karma do the heavy lifting. I didn't have to fight or yell. All I had to do was stay patient and let the truth and the system work. He wanted my power so bad, but in the end, it was his own lights that went out. And that, my friends, is how karma works. Quietly, perfectly, and exactly when you least expect it. If you enjoyed this true story of neighbor drama and poetic justice, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Because here on Law and Order, we make sure that bad neighbors always get what they deserve.